We go. All right, so happy to welcome Sarah, who's a manager in the UX team at GitLab. So without further ado, I guess, Sarah, we'll just turn things over to you and you can get things kicked off.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ray. Appreciate it. So welcome. Thank you for coming today to learn more about the UX here at GitLab. This is a bit of an abbreviation of the webinar that we did a short while ago. So if you've seen the webinar, we'll go over some things, but this is also an opportunity for you to dig deeper into things that are interesting to you. Obviously, we have a small group. Typically, we leave questions to the end, but since it's so small, I'm fine with, if you are as well, Ray, people just kind of saying, hey, I have a question, and I can answer them as we go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, we'll do it that way. A little bit more like just an impromptu little meeting. So today we're going to take a not so deep dive into how we do UX here at GitLab. There we go. So as Ray said, my name is Sarah Veseloff, and I'm the UX manager here at GitLab. And there's not much more to say about that. I'm just the UX manager. So at last count, the entire GitLab team consists of 353 team members and 82 pets. That does not count my 12 pets. I have not had time to put them on the page. So just add 12 to the 82. So as I'm sure you know, we're a remote-only organization, and we currently have team members in 42 countries and regions. So it's pretty crazy. And as an open source company, we do everything in the open. Just like our product, our team handbook is open source and 100% public. So if you haven't, as of yet, had a chance to really go through it, I suggest that you do. In the slide deck, I've added the presentation notes so you can go through it on your own. And there's actually links to some of these things that I'm talking about. So you can go ahead and link to the handbook and take a look through. It is, I'll tell you, you'll get lost. You'll start going in one direction and hit a link and another link and another link. But there's a lot of really good stuff in there, and I'm going to link later to the specific UX section of the handbook as well. So I'll direct you there in a little bit. Actually, in a little bit would be now. So the handbook includes an entire section devoted to our department. It's split out into some subsections. So you jump in and there's a kind of an overall, what the goal and the vision of the UX department is, how we structure, how we think about our work, and how we work with others. Then we break it into UX designer workflow and UX research workflow. So you can get a better understanding of the day-to-day for a UX designer and the day-to-day for a UX researcher. And I think it'd be worth going through some of that. It might give you more insight into how we tackle issues, how we tackle questions, and just the way we view the ever-changing UX here at GitLab. And there's a link here in the deck as well. So as of right now, the UX department is made up of 2 UX researchers and 10 UX designers. Together, just this team, we span 8 countries and 6 time zones. I don't know how many pets we have. I wouldn't try counting because like I just outnumber everybody. So probably a lot. And we are hiring. So the UX team is actively hiring right now. We have 3 open positions for UX designers. And in the deck, in the speaker notes, there's a link to the UX designer position. And then there's actually a link to the job application if you're interested. We do work in specific areas. I'll talk more in depth about that here in a little bit, but you can see that the vacancies are for release and verify, monitor, and secure. I think we have release and verify filled. I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look. But we still do have 3 openings total. I think it's going to be monitor and maybe 2 for secure. But yeah, you would work in a specific area, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But we are looking for all levels, intermediate all the way to senior. We do have a UX manager position open. With so many people on the team, we're growing, and we need to add some more management layers. And there is a UX director position open. So how we work as a department. You'll hear me use the term UXer during this webcast. This is how we refer to members of the UX department. We have GitLabbers, and UXers is kind of how we refer to ourselves. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I just mean us, the whole department. both researchers and designers. We're all UXers. So quick overview. We have two departments here at GitLab, essentially, the dev and the ops. And within these two departments, we break things down a little further into team stages. And you can see that in this diagram. Create, plan, verify, package on the dev side, and then release, and I can't quite see it. My glasses I need new glasses. Release, configure, and monitor on the other side. So we break it out into dev and ops. And secure and manage kind of go layer on top of those. They don't fit within that nice cycle quite as well. But I believe manage falls on the dev side and secure on the ops side. Is that correct, Ray? Do you remember? I think so. I'd have to look it up.
Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure either. But.
Yeah. You can look actually in the product part of the handbook, and they have a really nice breakdown. This is more of an overview. But we break it up that way to make it a little bit easier to pair up and actually tackle individual issues rather than trying to attack the whole thing at once. So each of the team stages has a dedicated engineering team and a product manager. And since UX is part of the engineering team here at GitLab, that means that each team stage has at least one dedicated UX designer. Some have two, most will have two eventually, and possibly more, because as we grow and as there are more resources for front end and back end, we'll need more UXers to help think about those solutions and push forward that product area. So the UXer is responsible for the same features their PM oversees. UXers work alongside the PM at each stage of the process. So we assist with the planning, the discovery, implementation, and then further iterations. And the area that a UXer is responsible for is actually part of their title. That's how you know where people work. So we have a UX designer for plan, UX designer for package, release, etc. You can see which area of the product each UX designer is aligned with in our team org chart. And because right now we don't have two UXers for every single stage, UXers also serve as backup designers for other areas of the product. So this area will be listed on the team org chart under their title as expertise. So you'll see someone maybe is the UX designer for plan, but they have expertise in release. So that way, if someone is out on vacation or not available, that backup is available for questions and to help in any type of emergency situation that may arise. And there's a link here in the deck to the team page. So any questions about that since we have such a small group? Looks like we're good. Okay.
I do have a quick question on this one, Sarah.
Yeah.
So how do you manage the work of the team? And perhaps you're about to show some issuers right now, so perhaps you want to tackle that one already next. But how do you coordinate the workload of the team and as a team, and then working with different teams essentially?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a lot of overlap essentially for UXers working on create, for example, and UXers working on release?
I would say yes and no. And it's a good question. I don't know that I go in depth into how we work. I might. It's been a while since I went through this whole deck, so I think I might go into some areas of that, but I can give you a brief summary here, and then if I go in deeper later, then that's great.
Sure.
So essentially, the UX department is unified together. We need to be unified to make sure that we're all pushing forward with the same vision, standards, consistency for the product. We have to be aligned. Each UXer is embedded in their area, and they carry in those standards, right? And those goals and visions, that overarching vision that we have for what we want GitLab user experience to be into their areas. And even though their day-to-day is very much with their stage, so it's with the plan group or it's with the release group, they're often in, we have UX calls, we have a chat that we all are in, a Slack channel, and they're often asking each other for input, right? So Pedro will be working on something on the plan team. That's where one of my UXers works on plan, and he'll ask Tori, who works on, where does Tori work? Manage? It's terrible. I can't remember. We have so many people now in so many stages. He'll ask Tori for some input, who's in a totally different area. And so that way we do have that cross. But you do have that time to focus in and really understand the history of the area you're in and where that future is going to be. And I think that's important. We didn't have that before. People were kind of able to jump around and work in different things. And so you lost that cohesive view of something, right? And so that's how we keep everyone together and making sure that we have the holistic view, but we also have that very specific area view.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. So at GitLab, we follow a monthly release cycle. We have ship on the 22nd of each month, and we plan and track these monthly releases using milestones. So you'll see milestones attached to issues. And the only way to show this properly was with this very, very big diagram, which looks very small on the screen, but just follow me for a minute. Our release timelines are overlapping. So for example, when a release is shipped to production on the 22nd, the scope for the following release has already been established earlier in the same month. And this kind of visualizes this overlapping. So we'll ship on, I like to think of it actually as starting on the 8th, and that's kind of an easier way to look at it. So 8th is our kickoff. So when we kick off a release, we've already planned, we've already decided what's going to be in it, we're ready to go. On the 22nd of that month, the release for last month will go out, or the one that we worked on last month will go out, because we're already working on the one ahead. And on the 7th, we have a cutoff. So there's this leapfrog pattern to it. And it's very confusing mentally to think about. That's why I did a little diagram. It helped me a lot when I was first starting, kind of understanding how we plan and how we work towards these things. It's like anything. Once you start doing it for a while, it makes perfect sense. But it sounds a little strange when you try to explain it. So each month, the team, UX, product managers, engineering, we all converge on the issues that are part of that milestone to communicate about scheduling and prioritization. And once the issues in the milestone have been set, each UXer will assign themselves to the issue in their area that needs UX attention. So my goal for each group is that the UXer, the engineers, and the PM are talking together about what's possible, what's within the scope of this milestone, what they can get done, and they're assigning themselves to those things that can be done. And then they're just running with it. So I'm not assigning anyone. I'm not deciding who does what. That is all within the sphere and control of that group and that UXer. So of course, as a 100% remote company, we work asynchronously most of the time. We do meetings and of course things like this, and we have Slack where we can talk with one another. But the overall goal is that people are able to have work-life balance and make their own schedules and be able to do things in a way that works for them and their lifestyle. So we use the GitLab issues to propose and discuss UX improvements across the entire product. All the discussion happens within the issues, and that includes adding notes from those Slack conversations or the occasional synchronous meetings that happen. So if you're in a meeting, you're taking a synopsis or a summary of that meeting and you're putting it in the issue so that anyone that wasn't there has an idea of what was discussed. We want to make sure that everyone is part of the process and that everyone can contribute. You shouldn't be missing things because you weren't in a meeting or you weren't in that Slack channel. So, I mean, that speaks a lot to collaboration. Collaboration is one of our core values here at GitLab. And our collaboration value is about helping each other when we have questions, need critique, or need help. It's not about brainstorming or waiting for consensus. And I think that's something that when people think about collaboration, they think, oh, we all get together and we decide what the best thing to do is. That's not necessarily true. We don't want design by committee. We want each UXer to feel that they are the expert in their area and they can make a decision. But the same is true for a PM or an engineer. If they feel strongly about something and they want to push it forward, then we'll work with them to push that forward. So as we work through individual issues in a milestone, we involve the entire team in the discovery and design process, but we don't wait. We have a bias for action. Any questions on that? Good. You have a question, Carla?
Is my sound better now? Is it still noisy?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know where this laptop speaker is. It's not my laptop. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. At my company, we do things like modeling, where you would take a feature, you would work ahead, do the process, but then you choose when to involve some other dev, get some input, which is very different from how you guys do it, right? So you use Slack, and then people can comment anytime they want.
Yes. I would say we use issues mostly. Slack is kind of just for if you really need a quick answer on something, but yeah, definitely in the issues.
So if you need someone urgently, I don't know if that ever happens, like their input to help you make a decision, how do you go about that?
It doesn't. So I would say that there's an expectation here at GitLab that if I send you a message in Slack and you're not available, you're not expected to just jump to wherever you are and answer that. I'm letting you know that I need something, but it's up to you to answer. So, and I think that's why we have this rule of a bias for action, not waiting for consensus, right? So for the most part, the onus is on you to make that decision. Most decisions can be reversed. It's not going to be the end of the world. Mistakes can be fixed. It's better to keep moving forward than to wait. If we all waited for one another, with 353 people, I don't know how much we would get done. I will say that for things like, there are critical stopping points though, right? So when it comes to getting something into GitLab, we go through a process of reviews, and a dev has to review and a UX designer has to review. Yeah. And that can be very time pressured. So in that case, sometimes what will happen is, say a dev can't get a hold of their UXer, they're just not available at that time, they'll ping me and say, hey, is there anybody that can look at this and give me a review so that I can get this in? And in that case, of course, I'm gonna jump in, or I'm gonna have someone else jump in. So we do have that ability to push things forward when we need to. But really, it's on you to say, okay, you know what, this makes sense. Let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay, so there's a lot of power and trust in the employee. That's really cool.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and it's kind of scary sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes you're like, oh, should I make this decision? But over time, you get used to it. And so there's supposed to be also this low level of shame, right? That if you make a bad call or you make the wrong choice, that doesn't define you as a person. It was a bad call. It was a bad choice.
It's your work.
It's your work, and you learn from it and you move on. And honestly, the more bad choices you make, the faster you're going to learn, because it doesn't feel very good. So. And
then I guess you have something to measure to against. When you fix it the next time, you can actually see I learned there, because you can look at your mistakes.
Exactly. And so mistakes are important here, and that's something that I tell all of my new UX designers, because it's scary. It's scary enough to start a new job in a new place, but to come into a place where, there's not that opportunity to sit at lunch and just get to know each other, or have a coffee and hear about their kids, or hear about this. I mean, we have that in this virtual world, but for the most part, you're sitting by yourself and you have to make these decisions. You can't wait for other people. You can't turn in your chair and say, hey, I can't say, hey, Tori, what do you think? She's not there. I have to make that choice. So I think that you're right. There's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of, you have to be very self-motivated, someone that isn't afraid to push. But I tell a lot of my designers when they come in that you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're going to feel, for me personally, I just felt really dumb. I was like, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn, and there's so much I don't know. You have to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable for a short while, and it just comes over time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So how do we actually structure our work, right? We know about milestones and about collaboration and how we talk. So the UX department has a shared project on GitLab, and the project houses all of our work, our in-progress files, along with prototypes. It's a shared repository, and it helps ensure that we're able to find the files and designs whenever necessary, right? We can't have them on our computer. That wouldn't do anybody else on the team very good. So it's very important that we keep this updated, and all of our work is pushed to this repository. And I will say that each issue is different, but we do often begin with designs in Sketch. And we'll share those designs in the issue, asking for feedback and iterating until we get it right. Once complete, that design gets implemented in GitLab. In my speaker notes, I have a link to our design repository. I will call out that we don't do the typical master branch scenario because we're using Sketch files, and you can't, in GitLab right now, you can't version them. So when you're pushing your Sketch file, you're overriding that whole Sketch file. You're not just pushing the changes that you made. So often, that's why we have this system of having progress folders, because we're only touching the files that we know we're working on. But as a team, I will say we are looking into changing this process and giving ourselves the ability to actually version control these. It's kind of one of our big pushes right now. And like I said before, even though each UXer is dedicated to a product stage, they're still part of that larger UX department. So we meet weekly to discuss announcements, initiatives, process improvements. We share plugins, things like that. And that helps us stay aligned on our vision and goals. So these calls are recorded, and attendance is not mandatory because we're all in different time zones. But everyone can participate to those. People can add points even if they're not going to be there, and we'll read them out. And of course, we also have our summit. This is outdated now. It says upcoming summit. Unfortunately, it's already over. It went by way too fast. But our next summit will be in New Orleans next year. So very exciting. So iteration. This is something really important that I want to highlight because I think a lot of people come in thinking, oh, iteration, yes, ideation, that's what we do. That's what designers do. We do it to the extreme here at GitLab, and it works really well. So iteration means making the smallest thing possible and getting it out as quickly as possible, right? We have this every month release cycle that we go through. It's painful. I've got to say, it's very painful. You may feel embarrassed by how unfinished or how unpolished your suggestion seems, but it's okay. If you're doing iteration correctly here at GitLab, it should be painful. You should always feel like, oh, I could do so much more. You will in the next iteration. But the good part of this is that we get it out quickly. It reduces that cycle time. It's out there in the world, and we're getting feedback from users right away. So we can quickly improve. So you may have an idea of like, I'm going to put this thing out, and I already know the next 3 steps that I want to do. Like, I'm positive that these are the ways that I can improve it. But it goes out into the world, and all of a sudden people are coming and saying, hey, did you think about doing this? Or this would be better if you did this. And you think, wow, that is not at all how I intended to take this. But now that users are actually using it and giving me feedback, I have a much better view on what's useful to the user, right? So that's the importance of iteration here at GitLab. And I can't overstate it. And it's not just one of GitLab's credit values. It's one of the foundational concepts in design thinking and user experience. Planning too far ahead without real-world feedback can cause you to build something that doesn't meet users' needs. And all you're doing is wasting time. And it can bring the team very far off track. So not only are you wasting time, but now you have to backtrack and try to unravel where you went wrong. And you're just losing the ability to quickly keep improving on what you already have. And I've linked here in the deck to our handbook with our values. I think they're really interesting and cool to go through. So I think it's especially vital in this open source community, this idea of iteration. Keeping changes small and iterative makes it easy for you to contribute to GitLab, right? Because you can jump in and, like Carla, you wanted to fix a grammar mistake. I've heard you even have done another one since we talked. So it's like, you know, you're able to really jump in and make these changes and feel good and get that feeling of like, okay, I am making a difference. And it just kind of ramps you up to do more and more. And obviously, as part of this hackathon, I'm sure we've talked about this, but we do have this list of improvement issues that we're actively seeking community contributions from. They're small in scope, and it allows the community to contribute designs or code to the issues. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can contribute specifically to UX kind of here at the end of this presentation. So I want to give a quick overview of UX research. So we do have 2 UX researchers here at GitLab. They're slowly kind of becoming almost their own department here, because they push forward a lot of our initiatives and feed data to the PMs as well as our designers. And the goal of UX research, of course, is to understand the needs and concerns of users, often by observing how they interact with the product, and other times gathering data through surveys, user interviews. We're even looking into doing customer feedback, customer focus groups, and beta sessions. So, and you can see in this diagram, what people say they do does not always actually equal what they do. So it's very important not to just listen to what people say, but to watch what they do. And we can even fall into that trap ourselves as designers, right? I do some development, I do some front end work, so I feel like, okay, I get a developer's point of view. But I get a developer's point of view from my perspective. That doesn't mean I understand the whole point of view and all the spectrum of things that can be done or should be done in the product. So it's important to keep that perspective. So we strive to meet the needs of our users while balancing our requirements and our milestones, right? We're constantly pushing forward while meeting our goals. And it can be difficult to juggle a lot of different opinions and expectations. We get a lot of very vocal feedback. Users want this feature or they want this feature improved, and we have to balance that with what we have on our plan. If we stop to answer every single one, we would never be improving the product. We wouldn't be where we are today. So please never feel like we're ignoring you or we don't agree with you. We just have to prioritize. And that's why it's so wonderful to have community contributors, because if you're passionate enough about it and you feel like, oh, I wish they would prioritize this, you can help us do that. Have a merge request, give us a design and say, this is what you should do with it. It may spark that prioritization, right? That ability to get it done faster. So you can actually contribute to UX research as well. It's not just design and code here. We encourage everyone here to create new issues for UX research. There's a proposal template in the UX research project, and I encourage contributors to describe questions, identify their assumptions or theories, so that we can think of the best way to answer those questions. We review a lot of the proposals, and then we determine the types of studies to conduct. And you can actually see some of our remote UX research methods through a link here in the speaker notes. But we do survey research, usability testing, user interviews, card sorting. A great way to choose a research method really is to ask yourself what you'd like to learn and what you need to reach. How do you want to communicate your questions to participants? Is it visually, verbally, or both? So there's a whole article on how we conduct UX research if you're interested in learning more. And so this is our essential process here. We outline, so after we decide on a method, we recruit participants from our research panel and we conduct the study. And once it's completed, we import to analyze the data, interpret the results in an unbiased way. And it's often helpful to outline the factors that could influence the results and discuss other possible interpretations. So we always want to make sure that we're interpreting it in the cleanest way possible, and we're seeing it with eyes wide open. We're not projecting our own biases or assumptions onto these results. And at the end of each study, we create a report and communicate these results to everyone in the issue and then across the company so that everyone has access. And there's a link here that goes more in depth into this as well. So the cool thing is that you can see all the UX research we've ever done here at GitLab. So if you're really interested as a UX designer, like I know a lot of places just don't have the bandwidth to have dedicated UX researchers, so it's on designers to do that themselves. And I thought this would be such a cool resource to be able to go in and look at this archive and actually see what's been done, how the studies were conducted, and then what actually came from those studies. So you can look through this archive and see all the reports, research, and then take a look at the resulting product discussions. And there's a link here in the deck. As I said, we do have a research panel. We're always looking for participants. It's a database of both GitLab users and non-users. We send out invitations to participate in surveys, interviews, card sorts. So if you're really interested in joining, which I highly recommend you do, I might be a little biased in that recommendation, but it'd be great if you would join. There's a link here in the deck. And so a lot of interesting things. You get to do some testing on prototypes before they ever come out. We did all of our navigation changes through prototype testing with our research panel. I don't know if you remember last year, we did that huge navigation redesign. And a big part of it was our research panel. Ooh, I'm getting there. We're almost through it all, I promise. Any questions? Are we good? Okay, I don't want to just talk at you the whole time. So, design system. There's so much talk about design systems out there. I'm sure you're kind of like, no, not another design system talk. I'll keep it interesting, I promise. Design systems are important. So, a design system, what is it and how do you benefit? First of all, it's consistency throughout the interface, right? We want to make sure that we are using the same solutions. We're using a consistent look and feel. We're not solving one thing with a filter and solving the same type of problem somewhere else with a sort. That's very confusing for users. It's not cohesive. It's not consistent. We want predictable user experiences, right? We want you to kind of almost have this, if you've ever had the experience of driving somewhere that you've been, like maybe from work to home or home to work, and you get there and you don't even remember the drive and you're almost like, wow, like where was I? We almost want to get to that in some of these experiences. It's so predictable, it's so known, you may not even be able to articulate it, you just do it, right? You're not wasting any of your time. And a design system actually gives us more time to devote to solving problems instead of redesigning the same component. And I think any designer can relate to this. You know, you have this problem given to you and you start working on it and say you don't have a design system and you get about 2 hours in and you realize, oh, I've already solved this before. I did this over here, and then you have to go look for it and try to bring that into this particular problem. A design system allows us to have that already at hand. So that gives us more time to focus on bigger problems, more complex problems that we haven't solved. It allows us to simplify the code base. We can componentize and structure things so that we have a series of reusable components instead of rebuilding and having different things everywhere. We want to make sure that our CSS and our front-end code is maintainable and scalable. And it gives more autonomy. We want our design system to be something that a product manager or an engineer can use to answer a UX question. We should never be a blocker for progress, right? It should never be like, oh, we're waiting on UX. It should be, well, we went to the design system and we see that this is how we normally do it. I've pinged the UXers, but let's just move forward until they have a chance to take a look. That, I think, is fantastic. And that allows everyone to feel like they're contributing. So we get started by building a solid foundation. We started with perceptual patterns, so defining the styles that are the overall aesthetic of the brand, probably what you think of as a style guide, right? So the measurement system, typography, colors, icons, nailing all of those things down first, because those are the pieces that are going to be reused over and over in different areas of the product. So you want to get those done first. You're going to get the most bang for your buck by having those all outlined. Then we take those pieces and we start building our entire system. And we did this by breaking our components down using the atomic design principles. So atoms, molecules, organisms. You start with atoms. Atoms are the smallest pieces, right? So this heading or this avatar. And then you start building molecules where you're putting things together in a pattern that makes sense. And then the organism is the bigger overall, right? So you can see here we've got the molecules, the modifiers, and the organisms in this little example here. So our organism is this entire navigation. The molecules are the pieces that make that up, and those atoms are the kind of those individual parts. If you don't think normally that way, it can be a little confusing at first, but it makes sense as you go. And if you really like science, it's a lot easier. So we apply perceptual patterns to components. We took core pieces of the application and mocked them up with new guidelines to ensure that our rules would work in a variety of instances and that we weren't too rigid. So you never want to do just the happy path. we did these things with too long of titles, or people that didn't have avatars, all these different data that didn't come through correctly, trying to make sure that we were thinking through all the edge cases when designing the system. And then documentation, this is a huge part of it. So while building out components in our Sketch library, we've made sure to document as we go. So every time something gets added to the library, we don't just add it, because it's very easy to add something and forget the reasons why you even put that together, right? And then there'll be questions from others who are new to this pattern and saying, well, why did we do this? And why did you do that? So we take that time to not only add it to the library, but define, this is why we made these decisions. This is how you're to use this. Do this, don't do this. And that's what gets put into our overall design system, which is design.gitlab. That houses the documentation, the front-end guidelines, and eventually, as we start rolling out our components, it will also house the live code examples. And that's just design.gitlab.com. I should have a link in here. I missed that link. My bad. And if you take a look at our design system, you'll notice that there's a lot of to-dos. Remember we said that thing about painful, shameful, you should feel embarrassed. We do feel a little embarrassed that there's a lot of to-dos, but we believe in iteration, and we believe in not waiting till something's perfect. So we put this out there as is, and we're continuing to iterate and add these items. We don't want to try to tackle everything at once, and we don't want to fall into the trap of adding images, right? So it'd be easy enough for us to go ahead and add an image, and it looks pretty, and everyone can come in and take a look, but we change things every single milestone. The upkeep of that would just be impossible. So we're holding out for our live components, which will allow and enable both designers and developers to come in and actually take the components they need to build something. We do have a sketch preview. So for each one, at the very bottom, there's a link to a sketch preview that will show you the margins, the padding, the typography. You get all the specs that you need. So we do have that there. It's just not visible. You have to click on the link. And so into the future, well, that's weird. There we go. A design system is never finished. We don't have a finish line. We have a forever line. We're just going to keep going and going and going. So it's just a matter of keeping it up and maintaining it as we go. Okay, home stretch. Any questions before I jump into this part?
Hi. If you iterate the whole time, do you ever get lost? Is it a mission to remember the things that you need to go back on and fix? For example, if you do small things at a time, do you ever get lost? Because it probably gets a lot. Like, and then you forget, and then there's that ugly thing sitting there that just never changes. You know?
Yes. So
okay, I
true.
wouldn't say ugly. That's mean. That's also being.
No. There are some ugly things in there. I'm not going to lie. There definitely are. We no shame, right? We put it out there, and we knew that it needed to be iterated on. Yes, and I think that's something that we're improving on. I think that was more true probably a year ago than it is now. And it's one of the many reasons why we went to this idea of stable counterparts, right? Having a PM, a UXer, a front end, a back end, everyone dedicated to this area of the product. Because when you're not dedicated to an area and you're jumping around, exactly what you just said will happen. You iterate on you put something out there, you want to iterate on it, but then you get pulled into this other area and you forget about it, right? So with everybody focused on this feature set, it's everyone's goal to continue to push this forward. So we have this idea here of depth and breadth. So breadth is constantly making sure that we're adding capabilities and enabling users to use our product in the best ways possible. Depth is about taking the things that we have and making them the best user experience, adding as much capability as possible to those things. And it's a tough balance, right? Because you want to completely move forward all the time. And it can be difficult to justify the time to stop and actually add some depth to things. But I think having these dedicated teams helps us do that. And the onus is on you as a UX designer. I hate to say this, it sounds terrible, but for my team, a lot of times they'll say, oh, why, I want this scheduled. Do it. Rally. Tell the PM why you think it's important. Advocate for it. as a UX designer here, we have to be advocates for the users. So it's up to us. If the PM doesn't see the value, we need to show the value. So yeah, it sounds terrible, but it's actually a lot of fun. You get good at kind of like going toe to toe with some PMs about some things in a very friendly, nice, healthy way, I promise.
It's good to practice your communication skills, I guess.
Yes. And, that is a very important skill here. And I think even more so because it is remote and so much of how we communicate is over just flat text. I like to joke a lot, obviously. And I have a very sarcastic personality, and sarcasm does not translate well. So I've had to learn to adjust my communication skills and make sure that I'm coming across in the way that I intend.
Sure, that's a whole different way of communicating. That's true.
Yeah, very,
you
very
can't
different.
have your body language. Yeah, that's true.
No. Yeah, I mean, and sometimes, you can't even rely on the look on your face for people to know you're just kidding, right? So, cool.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Hi,
So, yeah.
Hi. So, like, since everything we work in GitLab, like contributors plus the employees of GitLab, they work remote, and whatever you contribute as design, say, or code is going to the users live. Yeah, you can get immediate feedbacks by the issues or the community online, but how do you get like an organic feedback before releasing any feature or say any design new like a breaking, not a breaking change per se, but then very different things like a new navigation bar or a new search bar? How do you get like an organic feedback from your own team and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you. So it depends, like you said, it depends on the severity. So if this is something that's going to be potentially breaking in terms of users won't know, they'll lose the ability to navigate or know where to navigate because it's so different. Something like that, we do a feature flag. So for the navigation redesign, we started with usability testing. So we knew there was a problem and we knew that it needed to be fixed. And we had rolled something out without doing usability testing, and it wasn't popular. It wasn't the right choice. But that's what we do here, right? So we recognized it wasn't the right choice, and rather than just revert, we took a step back and we said, okay, we need to look deeper and understand what the problem is here. So for that, we did usability testing. We brought people in, we did some baseline. We had them use our navigation, we watched how they used the navigation, we started to understand that it was an information architecture problem. It wasn't necessarily the navigation itself, it was how we were putting together this information and giving cues to the user on where to find this information. So for that, we used that feature flag. Once we did the usability testing and we were pretty sure we were onto something, we put it in there and we asked people to go ahead, enable it, play with it, and we had a feedback issue where we asked them to give their feedback. And for every bit of feedback that came in, we made an issue and we started fixing it, and we'd roll it out in the next, basically almost like a beta program, right? Being able to put in that feature flag. So we rolled it out into the next milestone into that feature flag, and then they were able to play with it and say, yes, this solved my problem, or no, this didn't solve my problem. We don't want to do that for too long. Again, we have a bias for action here. So we did that for 2 milestones until we felt confident that what we were putting out there was better than the current navigation, and we rolled it out. And I'm happy to say that the overall feedback was very, very good, and we've continued to iterate it on it since then. And we've continued to make it better, and we continue to look into it and make sure that the choices that we're making and the things that we're adding add value, they don't detract. If it's something smaller, I will say, we'll just do it. If it's something smaller, put it in there, see what happens, and move forward. We had one recently that kind of, for me, is a funny anecdote. We're trying to improve the overall view of the project page. Things are very centered, and we felt very strongly that left aligning them would be helpful. It was a small change. We just went from centered to left aligned. It was our very first iteration. We have all kinds of other things that we're planning on doing, but smallest thing first. We put it out, and all the developers at GitLab lost their minds. It was like, it's broken, because for them it just looks so different, right? For them it almost was a breaking change, but all we did was left alignment. So you also have to be conscious of how things are going to be perceived. right? Wasn't a breaking change. It was just an alignment. But for others, it felt so alien and strange that it really did disrupt their workflow. So I'm not laughing. I mean, it was just funny to me because I didn't expect that kind of reaction. You know, as a UXer, I think sometimes you're really surprised when things are not how you expected them. But that's the whole point, right? Is being proven wrong. And I know we're at 10:45. Are we good, Ray? Am I good to keep going?
No, you can keep going. So as long as you like. Yep. Cool.
Awesome. I see. I said I was going to finish early. I forgot to tell you all that I talked too much. So kept you here though, didn't I?
Yeah, you're good. So.
All right. So we do want you to contribute. Obviously, one of our big values is transparency. We share almost everything that we do. Source files, artifacts, deliverables, case studies, UX research. And a lot of people ask us why. Why are you so transparent? Why do you share everything that you do? And it really is because we believe we can do more together. Being open source allows the community to learn from us and for us to learn from the community. And this is one of the reasons why I really want to have more UX designers and UX researchers out in the community contributing. I think that there's so much that we can learn from others. So why contribute? It gives you a chance to collaborate, right? In an open community. You get to work with passionate people from all different parts of the world. I think one of the coolest things for me is you know, the people that I've been able to meet and the cultures I've been able to learn about. And it's really helped my communication skills because different cultures communicate differently, and I've had to learn to adjust and change, and others have had to do the same for me. So it's been a really good learning experience in that way. So if you're someone that's just starting out as a UX designer, you'll have the opportunity to work alongside UX designers and engineers and solve real world problems, right? So it's a great way to get experience before you have a job. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, starting out as a developer, designer, or anything really in any field, right? Even if you have schooling, they want you to have experience, but you can't have experience without having a job. So you get stuck in this catch-22 where you can't get the experience to get the job, and you can't get the job to get the experience. So this is a really fun, no pressure way to learn and gain actual experience. And if you're a seasoned UX designer, somebody that already does have the experience, some of the draw can be the opportunity to explore a new problem space. So this may be a very different problem space than you're used to working with, may be more technical than you're used to working with. And that could be a challenge. And it's also a space for you to mentor junior designers. So if you're a designer that's, you know, looking towards management or being a lead and you want that opportunity, this is a good opportunity to mentor and learn how to communicate with others and share your skills. So if you're not sure where to start, I've linked here in the speaker notes to the accepting merge requests that have UX attached. Accepting merge requests means that this is an idea we'd like to implement, but we're just not able to prioritize at the moment. So we've marked it with this label to let the community know that this is an easy place to start. By no means is it the only place to start, but it's an easy place if you're not sure. And the UX label means that it also needs the attention of a UX designer. And again, I just haven't been able to prioritize it for the team. So most of these are small, and it's a perfect starting point if this is your first time. But what if you have an idea, right? What if you have your own idea for UX improvement? We welcome your suggestions. So never feel like you have to wait to find an issue to contribute to. If you have an idea for a new feature or a user experience improvement, please create an issue. You can start by, I would say start by doing a quick search to see if anyone else has made the same suggestion. That happens a lot. I've had a lot of like what I thought were genius ideas that 5 other people had already suggested over the time. And I was like, thought that was good, but apparently everyone else already thought of it. So do a quick search. And if you can't find it, that's fine. Go ahead and put it in. It's okay if it's a duplicate. We'll figure out that it's a duplicate and we'll merge them together. So it's okay if you create something that's similar to something else. Use the feature proposal template and fill in each section. Describe the problem you're trying to solve and your proposed solution. It's really important to tell us what problem you're solving, because you can come in and say, I think we need to put a button here, XYZ, and have a picture of it. But what problem are we solving with this button? I need to know why you think this button is important. And there's also obviously some contributing guidelines that we have outlined, and I've linked to that in the slide deck as well. But essentially, you can go in, open an issue, have a suggestion, attach a sketch, a wireframe, or just list it out verbally. Everything is welcome. And then you may be wondering, well, how do I get help? I'm not sure who to go to. You can reach out to the UX department for help at any time. We're always here to give guidance and assistance. In the slide deck, there's an @GitLab, and you can see it here in the slide as well, @gitlab.com/GitLab-UX. It's a mouthful. That is how you can ping. That will send a ping out to all of the UXers and say, hey, somebody needs assistance. And hopefully between all, I think, I don't even know now, 14 of us at this point, someone will have time. And I will always say that I'm always available. If you have a question and you've pinged and you haven't gotten an answer, please feel free to @SVeseloff at GitLab. I'm also on Twitter a lot, I hate to say. So I'm very reachable on Twitter. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I welcome all connections. So definitely there's the ability to have one-on-one time and get some input from us. And I made it. That's it. Any other questions? I saw the chat go. Oh, someone had to run. Okay.
Yeah, I think somebody had to run real quick, but.
Yeah. I think we probably answered them all during the session.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just a question.
So somebody has a question, I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah. So all the accepting merge request labels, the UX issues that are there for accepting merge requests, they are mostly like not for UX depth or for design. They are only for contributing the code. Like, are you sure about like, are there any UX depth issues which are live right now, like which are accepting merge requests?
So you can contribute to any. So if you look through and you see, if you just look for the UX label, any of those need UX input. It doesn't matter if it has accepting merge requests or not. You can definitely contribute to those. If you're looking for something small to start with, that accepting merge request with a UX label is a quick thing to go through. But in fact, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Let me go to GitLab and then I'll show you. And you can continue asking questions. That's totally fine.
Yeah, the issues that I see on the GitLab issue page right now related to UX are the UX depth and UX research and the UX, right? So if it's like a broader label saying UX, what all does it include?
Each issue is going to be different. So here, I'm going to jump into the overall org. So we're looking at both CE and EE issues, just as an overview. So if I go to issues and I go to list, and I just filter by UX, and we'll just take a look at one or two of these. UX. So when you see the UX label, that means this needs a UXer to look at it. It may mean the UXer looks at it and says, this doesn't really need us, it doesn't involve us, and then we take the label off. But it's something that potentially could use us. And remember that UX is about solving problems. It's not about the way something looks. So you may see accepting merge requests that have UX on it that doesn't need a design, but it does need someone to think through the solution, right? And that is where user experience comes in. And that's where a front-end developer can give that. A PM can give that. We don't own UX, but we do own the standards for GitLab UX. And that's why you'll see our label on a lot of things. So if we look here, here's one that was just opened 16 hours ago. Create merge request discoverability. So this is an employee, Robert, here at GitLab, and he went to submit a merge request, and he was confused. So he walks me through this workflow and explains why he's confused and tells me what he expected. So this has UX on it so that we can take a look and say, okay, where did Robert go wrong? Where did he get confused? What solution can we come up with to make this better? You could do this as well. It doesn't have to be us. So anything like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're on mute. Okay, yeah. I know it's a weird thing, right? You think, oh, I don't know what I can do. You can do anything. There's never any harm, I mean, and going in and proposing something and saying, hey, what do you think, UX team? We love that. That's awesome.
And one last question.
Sure.
So like all the browsers like Mozilla and Chrome are heading towards VR experiences and developing, like everybody is into that giving that experience to the users. Is GitLab having like any agenda there, like in the VR and experiences?
Not that I have heard yet. Not that I've heard yet. But I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, I'll keep following.
Yeah, keep following.
I have one question, but I actually almost have to leave.
Okay.
But I've got a question. If everything comes in the whole time and everyone contributes, and you assign work, who decides priority? And what if I work on, for example, if I were working on something, I was working on the wrong thing, how do you get your priorities given to you? So how does that work in GitLab, basically?
Product managers.
Product managers, and then
they set the priority. We can advocate for priority. So as a team, we can say, we think this is really important. So the navigation was something we felt was really important, and we pushed that priority. And of course, they agree that is important. But PMs set the vision, the goals. And as a team, what we try to do is make sure that we're bringing up and advocating for things that are going to further that goal. That is the whole company's goal. It's not the PM's goal, it's GitLab's goal. So we all have to work together for that. So you'll know something is a priority by the milestone it has. So you'll see a milestone, maybe it's this one or it's the next one, or you'll see next 3 to 4 releases. That means it's something we really want to do soon. If you see backlog, that's something that hasn't been prioritized. It's something that we think we want to do, we just haven't had it's not a priority at the moment. If it has no label, then it's still kind of out there in space. No one's really taken a deep look at it for the most part. That's usually what that means. Or they have looked at it and they thought, I won't close it, but we'll leave it open for now. So really you're looking at those labels, that backlog, next 3 to 4, or is it in a release right now? And you can actually, you can look at our boards too to see what our priorities are. So if you go to boards, I know you got to go, so I'm trying to be quick.
No.
Oh, that's not boards. Hold on, that's pipelines. There we go. So in boards, you can see workflows, upcoming. There's all kinds of different boards, priorities. So this is like the next 2 to 3 for discussion. So these are the things that they're prioritizing in the next 2 to 3 releases.
So it's not actually, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So it's actually not common for someone to work on something that they should not be working on.
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, not common at all. And now that we're dedicated to areas, we can be thinking about things ahead of time. Like that's now how we're getting ahead, because we're so dedicated. We can think ahead and be working on things that, thinking about things that are going to be priority, but we're not actively working on right now. So that's how we're really starting to get ahead of this.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's it.
Yeah, and I think Hannes made a suggestion, like some of the issues that you showed as an example, it might be worth posting on Gitter. I think that's a good idea. So yeah, Sarah, if you want to do that when you have a moment. But yeah, thanks for your presentation, and thank you participants for your questions. I thought this was a very good session, and yeah, I'll have the recording posted hopefully in the next hour or so.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.